What happens when an abandoned space station becomes the last hope for humanity's rebellion? Just as Captain Elias Vorn thought he'd reached his breaking point, a single transmission revealed coordinates that would change everything, though not in the way anyone expected. The galaxy held its breath as patience transformed into something far more powerful. The galaxy had grown silent, too silent. On the outer rim of the Orion Spur, where stars burned cold and distant, Captain Elias Vorn stared at the blinking console of his aging freighter. The message was the same as always: insufficient credits for maintenance. Please settle outstanding balance. He ran a hand through his sweat-drenched hair, the ship's life support system groaning in protest. For 20 years, he'd played by the rules, paid his dues to the corporate council that now owned everything from the core worlds to the furthest colonies. But today, something inside him snapped. The docking bay lights flickered as another corporate enforcement vessel passed by, its sleek hull gleaming with wealth extracted from broken promises. Through the viewport, Elias watched helplessly as they seized yet another independent trader's ship, the third this week. His knuckles turned white, gripping the control panel as memories flooded back. The empty promises of fair trade, the rigged markets, the families destroyed by impossible tariffs. The galaxy had become a prison of profit margins, where hope was as scarce as water on a desert moon. His calm crackled to life unexpectedly. A distorted voice whispered through static. "They think we're powerless, Captain, but we know better." Before Elias could respond, the transmission cut out, leaving behind coordinates to a derelict space station orbiting the dead star Epsilon 9. Something about the message sent chills down his spine. Not fear, but recognition. This wasn't just another desperate plea. It carried the weight of shared suffering, of countless voices yearning for change. "We only scratched the surface of this galactic powder keg. Trust me, you don't want to look away now. Things are about to get much more intense. Stay tuned to witness what happens when one man's breaking point becomes the spark that could ignite an entire galaxy." The coordinates led to a graveyard of ships, their skeletal remains drifting silently around the abandoned station. As Elias approached, his scanners picked up faint energy signatures, life where there shouldn't be any. Docking procedures revealed dozens of vessels, each bearing scars of corporate oppression. Patched hulls, jury-rigged systems, and defiant graffiti scrawled across their surfaces. This wasn't just a random collection of ships. It was a flotilla of the forgotten, the cast-offs, the ones who'd reached their limits. Inside the station's corroded corridors, survivors emerged from shadows. There was Mira Solis, once a brilliant engineer reduced to salvaging scrap after her patents were stolen. Jax Torin, whose mining colony had been strip-mined then abandoned, and hundreds more, each carrying their own stories of betrayal. They gathered in the central chamber, faces illuminated by emergency lighting that painted their desperation in harsh angles. When Elias stepped forward, silence fell, not of hostility, but of recognition. He saw himself reflected in their eyes, worn down, pushed to the edge, but still standing. "We've all been bleeding them dry for centuries," Mira said, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Taking our work, our lives, our dignity. And for what? So their executives can live like gods while we fight over scraps." She slammed her fist against a rusted bulkhead, the sound echoing through the chamber. Around her, heads nodded in agreement, fists clenched in silent solidarity. Someone projected financial data onto the wall, numbers that told a story of systematic exploitation, of wealth concentrated in fewer hands each cycle. Jax stepped forward, holding up a shard of metal. "This was my son's medical implant. They repossessed it when I couldn't pay their inflated prices. He didn't survive without it." His voice broke, but his eyes burned with determination. Others began sharing their stories. each one a thread in a tapestry of injustice that had stretched across generations. The air grew heavy with unspoken resolve as they realized their individual struggles were symptoms of a single disease eating away at the galaxy. Suddenly, the station shuddered violently. Warning klaxons blared as everyone scrambled for cover. Through the observation deck windows, corporate patrol ships materialized from subspace, their weapons charging. Red targeting beams swept across the assembled vessels, freezing hearts in terrified anticipation. This was it, the moment when patience would either break completely or crystallize into something new. We're approaching the boiling point, folks. What happens next will redefine the balance of power across the stars. You cannot afford to miss how these events unfold. Stay with us to witness history in the making. The corporate fleet commander's voice crackled through the comms, dripping with authority. Unidentified vessels, you are harboring known dissidents. Power down your systems and prepare for boarding. But instead of compliance, the station's speakers erupted with laughter, bitter, defiant laughter that bounced off the metal walls. From his position near the main viewport, Elias watched as every single ship in the flotilla simultaneously powered up their engines, their running lights transforming the darkness into a sea of rebellion. Remember Protocol 7? Myra's voice rang out through their hastily established communications network. Across dozens of ships, crews sprang into action, executing maneuvers they'd practiced in secret for months. Freighters transformed into makeshift carriers, launching salvaged fighters that danced between the corporate dreadnoughts. The first volley of shots wasn't meant to destroy. It was a statement, a declaration that the age of submission had ended. In the chaos, Jacks coordinated defensive formations while other captains demonstrated tactics learned from years of evading corporate patrols. The corporate forces, accustomed to facing isolated resistance, found themselves overwhelmed by synchronized movements and unexpected strategies. Old merchant vessels revealed hidden weapon emplacements, their crews fighting with the fury of those who had nothing left to lose. Elias's ship shuddered as it took a glancing hit, but he barely noticed. His focus remained fixed on the tactical display showing their growing advantage. Each successful maneuver, each evaded attack, each damaged corporate vessel fueled the fire spreading through the flotilla. Through the comms, he heard voices shouting encouragement, sharing vital information, covering each other's weaknesses with strengths forged in hardship. The turning point came when Mira activated the station's ancient defense systems, long thought decommissioned. Massive turrets emerged from the station's hull, their targeting systems enhanced with her custom modifications. The corporate fleet, caught between the station's firepower and the flotilla's coordinated assault, began to falter. Their perfect formation shattered as panic spread through their ranks. As the battle raged, something remarkable happened. Ships from nearby sectors, drawn by the unprecedented conflict, began appearing on the edges of the engagement zone. Independent traders, smugglers, even rogue elements from corporate security. All those who had suffered under the current regime joined the fray. What had started as a desperate stand transformed into the opening salvo of something much larger. Through the viewport, Elias watched as the corporate flagship attempted to retreat. The sight ignited a primal roar from the assembled rebels. This time, they wouldn't let their oppressors escape. Every ship surged forward, weapons blazing, forming a net of defiance that closed inexorably around their common enemy. The galaxy held its breath as the balance of power teetered on the edge of permanent change. The defeat of the corporate flagship sent shockwaves through the surrounding sectors. Within hours, encrypted channels buzzed with activity as news of the unprecedented victory spread. Ship captains who had spent decades avoiding attention suddenly broadcast open declarations of support. Hidden caches of supplies and weapons, stockpiled against uncertain futures, became shared resources in the burgeoning movement. The flotilla swelled to 3 times its original size, each new arrival bringing not just firepower but stories that added fuel to the collective outrage. In the aftermath of the battle, the station's central chamber transformed into a war room. Holographic displays showed real-time updates of sympathetic uprisings across multiple systems. Mining colonies shut down operations, refusing to send resources to corporate vaults. Agricultural stations redirected food shipments to struggling communities instead of luxury markets. Even deep space research outposts began sharing proprietary technologies, dismantling centuries of controlled knowledge distribution. Mira worked tirelessly at the main console, her fingers flying across interfaces as she coordinated logistics for an operation that had already surpassed anyone's expectations. Beside her, Jax oversaw the integration of new arrivals, his natural leadership skills emerging as he helped diverse groups find common purpose. The initial chaos of victory gave way to organized resistance, with specialized teams forming to handle everything from communications encryption to psychological support for traumatized members. Elias found himself at the center of this transformation, though he never sought the role. Captains sought his counsel, engineers presented him with innovations, and strategists valued his battlefield experience. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he drew strength from the growing conviction that they were building something unprecedented, a movement not defined by what it opposed, but by what it represented: unity in diversity, strength in shared struggle. The corporate response came swiftly but lacked coordination. Without their flagship's command structure, individual units launched scattered counterattacks that the expanding rebel network easily anticipated and neutralized. Intelligence gathered from defectors revealed fractures within the corporate council itself, with different factions blaming each other for the uprising. These divisions proved as valuable as any weapon, allowing the resistance to exploit weaknesses in their opponent's infrastructure. As days turned into weeks, the station became a symbol of hope rather than abandonment. Its corridors filled with purposeful activity as people worked together toward a common goal. Repair crews moved between ships, sharing parts and expertise. Medical teams treated both physical and emotional wounds, creating bonds that transcended old rivalries. The galaxy watched as this patchwork fleet evolved into something far greater than the sum of its parts, a testament to what could be achieved when desperation transformed into determination. The station's transformation accelerated beyond anyone's predictions. Where once dead corridors echoed with emptiness, they now thrummed with purposeful activity. Engineering teams worked around the clock, their combined expertise breathing new life into outdated systems. Ancient manufacturing facilities roared back to life, repurposing corporate waste into essential components. The air vibrated with the hum of fabricators and the clatter of tools, each sound a declaration of independence from corporate dependency. In the central chamber, representatives from various factions formed councils that operated with efficiency born of necessity. Former rivals sat side by side, their past conflicts overshadowed by shared goals. Traders negotiated supply chains, miners coordinated resource extraction, and scientists pooled their knowledge to develop innovative solutions to pressing problems. The diversity of backgrounds created a melting pot of ideas that sparked revolutionary approaches to age-old challenges. Training programs emerged spontaneously as experienced fighters shared their skills with newcomers. Virtual reality simulations allowed pilots to practice complex maneuvers while engineers tested new designs in safe environments. Medical professionals established rotating shifts, ensuring constant care for the growing population while training additional personnel. Even entertainment found its place, with musicians and artists creating works that captured the spirit of rebellion and provided much-needed emotional release. The most profound changes occurred in personal interactions. Barriers of species, culture, and language dissolved as people discovered common ground in their shared struggle. Shared meals became forums for exchanging ideas, while impromptu gatherings fostered friendships that transcended old prejudices. Children of former enemies played together in improvised recreation areas, their laughter echoing through refurbished corridors as a reminder of what they fought to protect. Technical innovations flourished in this environment of collaboration. Engineers developed hybrid propulsion systems by combining different species technologies. Communication specialists created quantum-encrypted networks that defied corporate surveillance. Medical researchers synthesized treatments using previously incompatible biological components. Each breakthrough reinforced the truth that their strength lay not in individual capabilities but in their ability to combine diverse talents. As the station evolved, so did its inhabitants' understanding of their movement. No longer content with mere survival or resistance, they began articulating a vision for a different kind of galaxy, one where cooperation replaced competition, where innovation served needs rather than profits, and where every voice carried equal weight in shaping the future. This shift in perspective manifested in everything from decision-making processes to resource allocation, creating a model of governance that attracted attention throughout occupied space. Amidst the rising tide of unity, subtle fractures began to emerge. In the engineering bays, arguments erupted over resource allocation. Some believed in prioritizing defensive capabilities, while others pushed for immediate offensive strikes against corporate strongholds. The council chambers echoed with heated debates about leadership structure, with factions forming around different visions for the movement's future direction. Even among the closest allies, tensions simmered as personal ambitions clashed with collective goals. Elias watched these developments with growing concern. Late-night meetings revealed underlying fears. What if victory came at too high a cost? Could they maintain their ideals in the face of escalating conflict? The burden of command weighed heavier with each passing day as he navigated conflicting advice and competing interests. Some suggested establishing a formal hierarchy, arguing that clear authority would improve efficiency. Others vehemently opposed any structure resembling the corporate systems they fought against. The situation came to a head during a critical strategy meeting. While discussing plans for liberating a major trade hub, several captains proposed tactics that bordered on the ruthless methods they condemned in their opponents. The room exploded into chaos as sides formed around ethical considerations versus practical necessities. Mira slammed her palms on the table, demanding they remember why they started this fight, while Jax argued for pragmatism in achieving their goals. The division threatened to unravel the fragile coalition they'd built. Meanwhile, rumors spread through the station about spies and saboteurs. Supplies went missing, systems malfunctioned at crucial moments, and anonymous messages warned of traitors in their midst. Paranoia crept into daily interactions, with people questioning motives and second-guessing alliances. The once open corridors became paths of suspicion, and trust, the foundation of their movement, began to erode under pressure. Despite these challenges, small acts of solidarity continued to occur. Engineers worked double shifts to repair damage from suspected sabotage, their shared exhaustion creating bonds stronger than suspicion. Medical teams treated all patients equally, regardless of origin or rank, maintaining their commitment to universal care. These moments of genuine connection served as reminders of their shared purpose, even as doubts threatened to divide them. The question of ultimate authority loomed largest. Should they establish a governing body? If so, how could they prevent it from becoming another oppressive force? How much freedom should individual ships retain? These fundamental questions tested the limits of their unity, forcing each member to confront uncomfortable truths about power dynamics and personal ambition. The answers would determine whether their movement remained true to its founding principles or succumbed to the very forces it sought to overcome. The crisis reached its peak during a daring rescue mission gone wrong. A team dispatched to save workers from a collapsing orbital platform found themselves trapped by unexpected corporate reinforcements. As conflicting reports poured into the command center, the leadership vacuum became painfully apparent. Captains argued over resource deployment while precious minutes ticked away, and the fate of hundreds hung in the balance. It was Mira who finally silenced the chaos, her voice cutting through like a plasma torch. "Enough!" she shouted, slamming her fist on the tactical display. "We're not debating market shares here. Lives are at stake." Her words struck a chord, reminding everyone of their original purpose. With precision born of years spent solving impossible engineering problems, she began issuing orders. Ships moved into position based on her calculations, creating openings in the corporate blockade while minimizing risk to civilian lives. The rescue succeeded, but the incident exposed dangerous flaws in their command structure. Following the mission, an emergency council meeting convened in the station's main assembly chamber. Representatives from each faction presented their cases for different leadership models, their arguments ranging from pure democracy to meritocratic hierarchies. The debate raged for hours, tempers flaring as old grievances resurfaced. Jax proposed a rotating council system, while others advocated for a military-style chain of command. Each suggestion met with equal parts support and opposition. Then Elias stood, his presence commanding silence. Instead of proposing yet another system, he outlined a framework for decision-making based on context rather than rigid structure. Tactical situations required swift, centralized command. Logistical matters needed expert oversight. Policy decisions demanded broad consensus. His approach acknowledged the complexity of their situation, respecting both the need for efficiency and the dangers of concentrated power. Slowly, nods of agreement spread through the chamber. Implementation proved challenging. Transition periods saw confusion as responsibilities shifted between different bodies. Some resisted giving up control in certain areas, while others hesitated to accept authority even temporarily. Training programs emerged to help members adapt to fluid leadership roles, emphasizing communication and mutual respect. Succession protocols developed to prevent power vacuums during critical moments, ensuring smooth transitions between decision-making modes. The true test came during a coordinated corporate assault on 3 separate fronts. The new system faced its baptism by fire as different aspects of the defense fell to appropriate command structures. Tactical units responded instantly to threats while strategic planning incorporated input from diverse perspectives. Though mistakes occurred and adjustments proved necessary, the overall effectiveness silenced many critics. The movement had taken a crucial step toward sustainable governance, proving that leadership could evolve without repeating the patterns of oppression they fought against. The successful defense marked a turning point in the movement's trajectory. News of their victories spread through unofficial channels, reaching even the most remote settlements. Mining colonies that had endured decades of exploitation began organizing strikes, their workers walking off-site in synchronized protests that disrupted corporate supply chains. Agricultural stations redirected harvests to feed rebel strongholds instead of luxury markets, creating shortages that rippled through corporate-controlled territories. The economic impact became undeniable as share values plummeted and executive boards descended into panicked meetings. Independent traders, once wary of association with the rebellion, began openly displaying symbols of solidarity. Cargo manifests told stories of subversive generosity, medical supplies rerouted to besieged colonies, spare parts delivered to struggling repair stations, educational materials distributed to communities denied access to knowledge. These acts of defiance created a shadow economy that challenged corporate dominance, demonstrating alternative ways of conducting interstellar commerce. The movement's influence extended beyond military engagements to fundamentally alter patterns of trade and resource distribution. On the diplomatic front, Ambassadors from neutral systems began seeking dialogue, their traditional neutrality shaken by the changing power dynamics. Some offered sanctuary to fleeing dissidents, while others provided covert support in the form of intelligence or safe passage through contested space. These relationships evolved into complex networks of mutual aid, with each participant contributing according to their capabilities and receiving assistance based on their needs. The corporate monopoly on diplomacy began to crack as alternative forms of interstellar relations emerged. Perhaps most significantly, the movement's success inspired innovation in technology development. Engineers and scientists, freed from corporate restrictions, collaborated on projects that prioritized practical applications over profit margins. Breakthroughs in sustainable energy, efficient resource recycling, and adaptive AI systems emerged from these cooperative efforts. The resulting technologies not only enhanced the movement's capabilities, but also demonstrated viable alternatives to corporate-controlled advancement. Knowledge sharing became a powerful tool for liberation, undermining the foundations of corporate technological superiority. The cumulative effect of these developments created a feedback loop of empowerment. Each success emboldened more individuals and communities to challenge corporate authority, while every new alliance strengthened the movement's reach and resilience. The galaxy watched as a new order began to take shape, not through conquest or coercion, but through the organic growth of cooperative networks that promised a different future. The corporate stronghold, once considered unassailable, now faced a multifaceted threat that attacked its very foundations of control. Victory exacted its toll in unexpected ways. The station's medical bay overflowed with casualties from recent battles, their injuries telling stories of close calls and desperate measures. Dr. Lien Marquez moved among the wounded, her usually steady hands betraying slight tremors as she performed procedures that demanded absolute precision. Supplies dwindled faster than they could be replenished, forcing difficult choices about resource allocation. Some patients waited longer for treatment than was ideal, their conditions deteriorating while priority went to those critical to ongoing operations. The psychological impact proved equally devastating. In the crew quarters, veterans of multiple engagements struggled with sleep, their dreams haunted by memories of lost comrades and narrow escapes. Counselors worked overtime, conducting group therapy sessions in converted cargo holds, while individual consultations spilled into corridor corners. The constant state of alertness wore thin, manifesting in irritability and strained relationships. Even simple tasks became monumental challenges as fatigue accumulated and stress mounted. Logistical nightmares multiplied with each new victory. Captured territory required securing and maintaining, stretching already limited resources thinner. Supply lines extended dangerously far, vulnerable to ambush and disruption. Maintenance crews worked around the clock, scavenging parts from less critical systems to keep essential functions operational. The station's aging infrastructure groaned under increased demands, with power fluctuations becoming disturbingly frequent. Environmental systems struggled to maintain breathable atmosphere for the growing population, leading to rationed oxygen usage during peak hours. Financial pressures mounted despite initial successes. Liberated assets often proved more liability than asset. Damaged infrastructure required costly repairs before generating returns, while integrating new territories into their network demanded investments they barely possessed. Debates over resource distribution grew increasingly contentious, with factions arguing over priorities and accusing others of hoarding critical supplies. The movement's currency, initially robust due to popular support, began showing signs of strain as confidence wavered in their ability to sustain momentum. Yet amidst these challenges, moments of human connection persisted. Volunteers organized recreational activities in damaged sections of the station, creating temporary oases of normalcy. Musicians performed impromptu concerts in engineering bays, their melodies providing brief respites from constant tension. Stories of personal sacrifice and unexpected heroism circulated through official channels, serving as reminders of their shared purpose. These small acts of resilience became lifelines, helping maintain morale when the path forward seemed impossibly difficult. The cumulative weight of these burdens threatened to overwhelm the movement's foundations. Each decision carried higher stakes. Each choice between competing needs felt more consequential. Leaders grappled with the realization that sustaining their gains might prove more challenging than achieving them, while frontline members faced the daily reality of sacrifices made and yet to come. The movement stood at a crossroads, forced to confront whether their vision could survive the practical challenges of implementation. The decisive moment arrived unexpectedly during a routine reconnaissance mission near the corporate stronghold of Delta Cygni. A small scout ship, piloted by novice navigator Cale Draven, stumbled upon something extraordinary: a hidden corporate archive containing centuries of suppressed information. As the data streamed into their systems, patterns emerged that changed everything. Evidence of deliberate famines orchestrated for profit, records of entire populations sacrificed for experimental technologies, documentation of mass migrations engineered to maintain labor pools. The revelations spread through the movement like wildfire, igniting a surge of determination that transcended previous divisions. In the central chamber, representatives from every faction gathered, their usual disagreements momentarily forgotten as they processed the magnitude of the discovery. Holographic displays showed irrefutable proof of crimes that span generations, connecting current leadership to atrocities committed centuries ago. The corporate facade of enlightened progress crumbled under the weight of its own documented history. Momentum built rapidly as the movement leveraged this information strategically. Broadcasting stations formerly loyal to corporate interests began defecting, their operators unable to justify continued support in light of the revelations. Independent journalists, long suppressed by corporate media monopolies, emerged from hiding to amplify the truth. The carefully constructed narrative of corporate benevolence unraveled as millions witnessed the evidence of systematic exploitation spanning multiple star systems and generations. Corporate response proved chaotic and uncoordinated. Executives scrambled to contain the damage, ordering drastic measures that only confirmed the movement's accusations. Attempts to discredit the evidence backfired spectacularly when internal communications verifying authenticity leaked through compromised security systems. Shareholders revolted, demanding explanations that corporate leaders couldn't provide without incriminating themselves further. The power structure that had dominated the galaxy for centuries began to collapse under the weight of its own secrets. In this climate of exposure and accountability, the movement launched its most ambitious operation yet. Coordinated strikes targeted key corporate nodes identified through the archive's data, each attack accompanied by public releases of relevant documents. Resistance cells activated across occupied territories, their actions guided by precise intelligence that left corporate defenses reeling. The galaxy watched as the seemingly monolithic power structure fractured, its foundations eroded by truth and justice long denied. The corporate empire unraveled with startling speed. Boardroom coups erupted as executives turned on each other, each trying to distance themselves from the damning evidence. Emergency broadcasts attempted to spin the revelations, but the sheer volume of verified documentation overwhelmed their efforts. Share prices plummeted as investors fled, triggering automated sell-offs that accelerated the financial collapse. Entire sectors declared independence, severing ties with corporate headquarters as local populations rose up against their former overlords. Legal proceedings began across liberated territories, with special tribunals established to address centuries of documented crimes. Former corporate officials found themselves facing charges brought by those they had oppressed, their power stripped away by the very systems they had manipulated for profit. Witness testimonies poured in from across the galaxy, painting a comprehensive picture of systematic exploitation that left no doubt about the need for accountability. The movement's legal teams, composed of defectors from corporate law firms, worked tirelessly to ensure justice would be served fairly and thoroughly. Infrastructure transition proved particularly challenging. Factories designed for maximum profit rather than safety or sustainability required extensive modifications. Supply chains optimized for corporate benefit needed complete restructuring to serve community needs. Teams of experts worked around the clock, implementing changes while maintaining essential services. Temporary shortages occurred as systems adapted, but the movement's transparent communication helped maintain public support through these transitional difficulties. Power redistribution became the movement's primary focus. Local councils formed to manage newly liberated territories, their members chosen through open nomination processes. Resource distribution shifted from market-driven models to needs-based systems, with algorithms developed by cooperative teams ensuring fair access. Education programs expanded rapidly, breaking down barriers that had kept knowledge restricted to corporate elites. Medical facilities opened their doors to all, implementing preventative care systems that addressed root causes of health issues rather than treating symptoms for profit. The cultural shift proved most profound. Art forms long suppressed for lacking commercial viability experienced a renaissance, supported by community funding models that valued creativity over profitability. Scientific research blossomed as restrictions lifted, leading to breakthroughs in fields previously deemed unprofitable. Media outlets transformed from propaganda machines into platforms for diverse voices, fostering genuine dialogue rather than manufactured consent. Each sector of society began rebuilding on foundations of transparency, accountability, and mutual support. From the ashes of corporate dominance emerged new forms of cooperation. Sector alliances developed flexible frameworks for interaction, allowing diverse communities to maintain autonomy while benefiting from shared resources. Trade routes transformed into exchange networks, where value was measured in mutual benefit rather than abstract credits. Engineers from different species collaborated on projects that integrated multiple technological approaches, creating hybrid systems more resilient than their predecessors. The movement's emphasis on adaptation and flexibility proved crucial as former corporate territories transitioned to self-governance. Education initiatives flourished, with learning centers established in repurposed corporate facilities. Curricula focused on critical thinking, collaborative problem-solving, and historical awareness, ensuring future generations understood both the mistakes of the past and the possibilities of the present. Mentorship programs connected experienced practitioners with eager learners, accelerating knowledge transfer across traditional boundaries. Research institutions opened their doors to citizen scientists, democratizing discovery and innovation in ways previously unimaginable under corporate control. Environmental restoration projects gained momentum as liberated territories invested in healing damaged ecosystems. Terraforming efforts shifted from profit-driven ventures to sustainable rehabilitation programs, incorporating indigenous knowledge and ecological science. Waste management systems evolved into circular economies, where every output became input for another process. Energy grids transitioned to renewable sources, with excess capacity shared through cooperative networks that prioritized accessibility over accumulation. Social structures underwent profound transformation as communities redefined relationships between work, leisure, and personal development. Universal basic services replaced exploitative employment contracts, allowing individuals to pursue passions rather than survival. Arts and culture thrived as creative expression became accessible to all, supported by systems that valued contribution over commercial viability. Healthcare evolved into comprehensive wellness programs that addressed physical, mental, and social needs holistically, rather than focusing solely on treating symptoms for profit. Governance models continued evolving, with regular feedback mechanisms ensuring systems remained responsive to changing needs. Decision-making processes incorporated diverse perspectives through rotating representation, while maintaining stability through institutional memory. Conflict resolution emphasized restorative practices over punitive measures, fostering understanding and growth rather than perpetuating cycles of retaliation. These adaptive structures demonstrated that organization could enhance freedom rather than restrict it, proving that collective well-being need not come at the expense of individual rights. The movement's greatest challenge emerged not from external threats but from internal evolution. As liberated territories implemented their own versions of cooperative governance, differences in interpretation and execution created friction. Some sectors favored strict egalitarian structures, while others embraced more fluid arrangements. Disagreements over resource allocation intensified when scarcity affected specific regions, testing the strength of newly established solidarity networks. The absence of centralized authority, once celebrated as a triumph over corporate tyranny, now complicated coordinated responses to emerging crises. Technological advancements brought their own complications. Open-source development led to rapid innovation, but also created compatibility issues between systems designed independently. Security concerns arose as interconnected networks expanded, requiring constant vigilance against potential vulnerabilities. The movement's commitment to transparent decision-making sometimes slowed responses to urgent situations, while attempts to streamline processes risked recreating the hierarchical structures they had fought to dismantle. Balancing efficiency with inclusivity proved an ongoing challenge that demanded constant negotiation and adjustment. Cultural integration presented perhaps the most complex puzzle. Diverse traditions and values occasionally clashed, particularly regarding social norms and community organization. Practices that worked brilliantly in one context failed spectacularly in another, highlighting the difficulty of universal solutions. Language barriers, though diminished by translation technology, still caused misunderstandings that could escalate into significant conflicts. The movement's emphasis on respecting individual autonomy sometimes conflicted with the need for collective action, forcing difficult choices between competing principles. These challenges manifested in tangible ways. Infrastructure projects stalled due to disagreements about design priorities. Educational initiatives faced pushback from communities protective of traditional knowledge systems. Economic experiments produced mixed results, with some proving sustainable while others required significant adjustment. Each success and failure contributed to a growing understanding that revolution wasn't a destination but an ongoing process of adaptation and learning. The movement's leaders found themselves constantly balancing competing interests, knowing that every decision carried implications for the future they were building. The movement's impact rippled through every aspect of galactic society. In the former corporate stronghold of Delta Cygni, now a thriving cooperative hub, children learned about their history through immersive experiences rather than sanitized textbooks. Public spaces bustled with activity as residents participated in decision-making processes that directly affected their lives. Artists transformed corporate monuments into living museums, incorporating interactive elements that encouraged reflection and dialogue about the past. The air carried the hum of productivity tempered by periodic celebrations of collective achievements, marking a rhythm that balanced work with community engagement. Across liberated territories, new traditions emerged alongside preserved customs. Annual festivals celebrated milestones in the movement's journey, with each region adding unique elements that reflected local contributions. Oral histories collected from participants ensured that personal stories of struggle and triumph remained vibrant parts of cultural heritage. Educational programs incorporated lessons learned from both successes and failures, teaching future generations about the complexities of systemic change. These practices created a living legacy that honored the past while remaining relevant to evolving circumstances. Technological innovation continued to flourish under cooperative models. Open research facilities attracted talent from across the galaxy, their work guided by ethical principles rather than profit motives. Breakthroughs in sustainable energy, environmental restoration, and social organization demonstrated the power of collective effort untethered from restrictive corporate agendas. Knowledge-sharing networks expanded, connecting diverse communities in collaborative projects that addressed shared challenges while respecting local contexts. The resulting technologies served as tools for empowerment rather than control, embodying the movement's core values in practical applications. Social structures evolved to prioritize well-being over productivity metrics. Healthcare systems focused on prevention and holistic treatment, incorporating traditional wisdom alongside scientific advances. Community support networks replaced impersonal bureaucratic systems, fostering genuine connections that strengthen social fabric. Work arrangements emphasized meaningful contribution over arbitrary measures of success, allowing individuals to pursue passions that benefited both personal growth and collective progress. These changes created societies where belonging and purpose became fundamental rights rather than privileges granted by power structures. The galaxy breathed differently now, its rhythms shaped by cooperation rather than control. From the central station that had sparked rebellion to the farthest reaches of liberated space, a new consciousness emerged, one that recognized interconnectedness without demanding uniformity. Ships traveled between territories not as instruments of profit but as vessels of exchange, carrying ideas and resources that enriched rather than exploited. The movement's success proved that change was possible not through conquest but through persistent, principled action that respected individual dignity while pursuing collective well-being. Future generations inherited a universe of possibilities, their choices informed by hard-won lessons about power, responsibility, and community. They faced challenges with tools forged from adversity, flexible governance models, ethical technological frameworks, and cultural practices that celebrated diversity while fostering unity. Each decision carried the weight of history but also the promise of innovation, building upon foundations laid by those who had dared to imagine different ways of being. The movement's legacy lived not in monuments or memorials, but in daily practices that embodied its principles of mutual support and shared progress. As new frontiers opened and ancient mysteries beckoned exploration, the galaxy's inhabitants approached them with cautious optimism. They understood that freedom required constant vigilance, that equality demanded perpetual effort, and that justice was an ongoing project rather than a final achievement. Yet they also knew that their shared history proved transformative change was possible, that collective action could overcome entrenched systems, and that humanity's patience, when properly channeled, could indeed shake the stars themselves. Thank you for joining us on this journey through galactic transformation. If you believe in the power of stories to inspire change and imagine better futures, please subscribe for more explorations of what's possible when we dare to challenge the status quo.